Welcome to the Quantum Awakening podcast, where we invite you to embark on a profound exploration of conscious evolution, human transformation, DNA upgrades, and the harmonious fusion of science and spirituality. Guiding you through this enlightening journey are your dynamic hosts, Sharon Milne-Barber and Amanda Bowden. With their extensive knowledge and expertise, they will serve as your trusted leaders of knowledge. Sharon, with her deep spiritual insight and celestial race knowledge, will shed light on the mystical aspects of your existence. Meanwhile, Amanda will share her expertise around manifesting, mind-body-soul connections, and how science and psychology are intertwined with spirituality. Join us on a transformative journey to enhance your perspective and to bring you enlightenment.
Hello everyone, welcome to Quantum Awakening, exploring conscious evolution. Me and Amanda are here.
Hello.
Doing our podcast, and we're doing special guest episodes. And this is our first one. And we have the lovely Beverly Jones from Awaken Mentoring.
Good morning.
And we will call her Bev,
Thank you.
if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine. I just always get introduced as Beverly.
That's wonderful.
Well, I don't know why, but there we go.
It is what it
thing.
is. And,
Yeah.
So the lovely Amanda knows Bev, and I know Bev as well through odd things. And
There's just a little story about that, actually.
Yeah,
if
carry on.
If that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Because before I came to you for networking, I went to another place, didn't I? And you know this story. But then I was invited to come to your networking, and the lovely Charlotte was there as well. And she had a brand new top in her hand, and it had 333 on there, and I knew that's where I was in the right place.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You've been coming ever since.
Yeah.
so if you've listened to our podcast, you'll know Amanda works with numbers. Do you want to investigate that? Because that's pretty awesome as well.
I know, I love numbers.
I'm number blind. I can't associate with them.
Oh, really?
But yeah, that's another story, isn't it? We must do some more podcasts, haven't we? So the reason we invited Bev, because she has a really amazing story, experience in life of burnout, and it's really to ask Bev to tell us her story and what was the pivotal moment in your life where you made a choice to turn things round. What did you learn, and can you share with us your experiences?
Yeah. Shall I just...
Yeah, just start
Carry on.
talking. Go.
Go for it. So I had a 30-year career in corporate, and I absolutely loved it. It was one of those things. And I look back at people and I think, oh, look at them, like high flyers and things. And I think, oh, maybe I should be doing that in my business. And then I realise I'm 30 years older than them, and I've already done it when I was in corporate. So it's just age, isn't it? And time goes. But I did 30 years in corporate, and I absolutely loved the jobs that I had. My last job was working on the railway, and it's not an easy job by any stretch of the imagination. It's a 24/7 job.
What did you do exactly?
I started off as group station manager, so I looked after all the stations in South Wales.
Whoa.
And then after about a year, became head of stations, where I looked after all of the stations across all of Wales. So it's all the staff, all the marketing, making sure, working with the trains, working on time, all the customer service, all the training. I kept taking on these other roles, like voluntary roles within the organisation, so incident stuff and just things, the disability awareness stuff, and I was adding all the time to what I was already trying to do, and it just got busier and busier and busier. And I then went back down to just do group station manager, because I was only on secondment to do the head of stations, so I went back down to that. Unfortunately, at that time, which was around 2007, 2008, things started going a bit, what we could call askew. And I found that I was, for want of a better word, being bullied at work, which was not great at all.
To relate to that.
It was a very toxic time. There was a lot of... I found it was really hard to deal with the amount of suicides, where people had taken their life by suicide, obviously in front of the trains and all that. I didn't ever have to deal with any of that.
That's
but I
something
had
you
to
never
do
think about, though, is it, from the outside when you go into that job?
So that was quite hard, really, and quite dark part of it, you know, where you
Yeah.
had to try and deal with, you know, keeping the customers kind
You
of
don't
happy.
have training for that, I
and,
guess.
No, I mean, I was, you know, I think I
Yeah.
was lucky. I didn't actually come face to face with any of that situation. But if it had happened, the trains would be delayed, and then you'd have people
Right.
questioning the delays, and then you know, it was
lot of
really
stress.
it was stressful. There was a lot of that around. And I used to wear a lot of black. I don't wear much black these days. I tend to live in navy. Anybody that knows me will know that. But I used to wear a lot of black, and it shows how dark it was. I used to have to wear like a black suit. I'd have black shoes on with black socks, and I would take my shoes off at night, and you could still see the ridges. Like you have white socks in trainers, you can see where the edge of the trainers are. You could see where your shoes had been, because of the black from the smoke and the diesel smoke. So you're working in that kind of environment, which I don't think was probably very healthy now looking back.
Yeah.
And it wasn't certainly healthy for me because of the way that, you know, I am quite a spiritual person, and I just felt I was absorbing a lot of this negativity. I was being bullied. I was also in a very toxic relationship at the time, and people say to me, well, how do you describe a toxic relationship? And I'm like, well, that's the relationship that everybody knows you shouldn't be in it, apart from you, because you think you're in it for the right reasons. And actually everyone else is telling you not to be in it because it's not the right thing. So I was in a very toxic relationship, and everything combined just stole my energy, just stole everything. And 2007, 2008, I started to get a lot of physical ailments. And so I had every infection under the sun, kidney infections, ear infections, chest infections. It was a nightmare. And we got to 2009, and I literally was on antibiotics for the first kind of 3 or 4 months of the year.
Your body was saying stop.
Yeah. 2008, I ended up, as I sit here with my leg up because I've got a tendonitis problem, I ended up with the same thing in 2008, except I had a boot then. They gave me a grey boot, and the only thing that was good about the grey boot was David Beckham had one at the same time. So it's about the only thing in my life that I've got in anything in common with him.
I've heard that
I'd love to
story
meet
in the
him, but
networking.
yeah, that's the only time I've ever had anything in common. And I don't know why, and I was still going to work. Even though I was on crutches, I was still going to work. I was still doing all that kind of, you know, stuff that I shouldn't have been doing. I should have been resting. And it got to May 2009, and I got to the point where I didn't even want to get out of bed. I was like, I'm just exhausted. I can't do this. And I went to the doctor, and he said, you've got 2 weeks before you're hospitalised.
Oh, wow.
So you take a sick note today, and you leave work now on sick leave.
So is that physical and mental health?
Physical and mental.
Yeah.
He said, you are heading towards a burnout. He said, it is my belief that you have clinical depression and severe anxiety. Because I couldn't stop crying. I think I went through a box of tissues. So he said, I want you to take a sick note today, or I will pick you up in an ambulance in 2 weeks because you will collapse in work at the station. So I had no choice but to take the sick note.
And that's quite good for a doctor, because normally they don't pick up so much on things like that.
He was like, you know, and he was only a locum at the
Did he
time.
give
I only
you any
saw him once.
medication or just literally
No,
rest?
he said to me, I want you to come back in 2 weeks. He said, I won't be here, because he was only a locum. He said, but see your normal doctor, the doctor that's the practice doctor.
Yeah.
See her and have a conversation with her. But let's get you out of work for 2 weeks to see how that all pans out. So I had the sick note, rang in on the Monday, rang in sick. And as I walked out of that doctor's, and it's in my book, and I tell the story, I literally felt a failure. I thought, you know what? Everything in my life up to this point, I failed. I failed my peers. I failed my parents. I failed my family. I failed myself. I failed at life. I failed my staff. I just literally everything. All I wanted to do was go home and go to bed, which I did. And I always say duvet days for people who just have a duvet day to watch a movie or a box set are very different to when you've got depression and you cannot physically get out of bed.
Yeah.
So I took to my bed. As I said, I rang in sick. I asked him to put workplace stress on the sick note because I didn't want them to say mental health or anything about, you know, coping or clinical depression. I just didn't want to admit that at that time to anybody. So just workplace stress. And things have changed 14, 15 years on. Obviously, you know, it's a lot more talked
It's
about.
talked about
And it
now,
wasn't
isn't it?
talked about then.
No,
it wasn't.
It was hidden.
It was hidden, you know.
And I guess you could say that would bring a lot of shame on you then, like you said, because you're holding all that on the back of you, like metaphorically, and carrying it around with you.
Carrying it around. And so I literally just, as I say, took to my bed, complete nightmare, just didn't want to get up, shut myself away from friends, shut myself away from family, because I just felt so embarrassed about the whole thing. You know, how could it come to this? What was I, you know, I'd been this person that, like I said, I was in my 30s, I'd achieved, I was always getting promoted, I was doing it really,
So
really
there was
well.
nothing in place offered to you back then like there is now.
There was occupational health, and I had to have a meeting with like a member of HR. The problem was that the person doing the bullying was the head of HR. So you're kind of like, I was fighting a lost cause, if I'm totally honest. She maybe had her own stuff going on. I don't know, and I'm not interested. I've not seen her from that day to this.
No.
And I don't want to, if I'm honest. But it took a lot for me to then start to rebuild and to try and think about, you know, what was I going to do? I was still in this awful relationship. I was saying to friends, you know, I can't come out, I can't do this, I can't do that. I had some really good friends who literally would drag me out and say, just come in for a drive in the car, you know, we don't have to go anywhere, let's just go for a drive. So I used to do that. And it just, it's all went from bad to worse really, because then in the August, that happened in the May, and then in the August, the flat that I had got dry rot and I couldn't live in it because I had to move out. So at that point I was like, well, I don't want to go back to my parents. My parents have been so supportive, you know, said they're still with us today. They're absolutely amazing. And they were really supportive. And that was my fear, because I kept thinking, how can I tell them I've got a mental health, you know, diagnosis? But they were absolutely brilliant. But I didn't want to go back and live with them, not because I didn't want to. We get on really well. We're really close, as we talked about earlier. But I didn't want to put that on them. Do you know what I mean? Like at that point, they were
like
in
it's
their
also
70s
connected
and
with your
80s.
feeling of failure.
Yeah, and I thought I can do
failing.
this.
Going,
you know?
it's like you're going back rather than forward.
Absolutely, yeah. So I didn't go to live with them. I in fact went to stay with a guy who was toxic. That really worked really well. I don't need to go
It's like
into
into another bonfire.
Just like went from one thing to another. I was like, oh,
You know, you put this in your life plan, don't you?
That's what I don't understand.
That's why I laugh.
Yeah,
It's because it was the catalyst for what you do now, which helps so many people.
Exactly, and the experience that I've had, which is then why I started the business. But I was he was, I suppose, relationship, what I thought. But I knew that I had to get myself out of it somehow. In the August, I went on medication. I went to the doctor and she said, look, you know, it's up to you, but I think you do need some help. She was brilliant. She described how my serotonin levels were low, how if I went on the medication, they would help bring my serotonin levels up. And when the two met in the middle, I could come off the tablets.
Yeah.
And she said,
good.
you know, this is what I want you to do. And this is your coming off them plan.
Yeah.
Before you even go on them. So I want you to understand that this could be short term, it could be for a
You don't
year,
get that now.
No.
do you?
it could be 18 months. But what I want you to understand is when the time is right, we will look at you coming off them, and at that point then we'll reduce your dosage down, and you'll do that for a couple of weeks. We will then go every other day, and then every 2 days, and then every 3 days, every 4 and 5, so it's once a week, and then you'll be able, your body will
That's brilliant, because that deals with that I'm a failure.
Yeah, and the fear.
Because you know there's a little light at the end of that
tunnel that she was going to help me get off them.
Yeah.
You know? And I was going for counselling, and they were brilliant as well. They were absolutely amazing, the counsellors that I had. But when we got to the end of 2009, I thought, do you know what, something's got to change. So in the November, it's about the November time. Yeah, in the November, I went to the doctors. And I remember sat with her, and I'd had an offer from the company because I said I never wanted to go back to work. I could never ever go back to work. I could never work for this person again. So I said, could I take ill health redundancy? And they'd come back and agreed that that could be the route if that was what I wanted to go down. So I went to the doctors and I had the chat with her, and I signed, you know, it was about signing a compromise agreement. It was about taking a sum of money. It was about all of that. So I had to come to terms with doing all of that.
Yeah.
But she said to me, she said, you can do this 2 ways. She said, you can fight it and maybe try and go through the court and see, you know, if you get more money, or you can do whatever, or you can take what you have now, walk away and leave it behind you and start your road to recovery. She was an amazing doctor. I tell you, she was absolutely brilliant.
Sounds like it.
She was amazing. I wouldn't have got through it without her. She's unfortunately not there now, but she was absolutely brilliant. And that's the sort of doctor you need. And she said to me, to release it, you need to sign this and move on with your life. Otherwise, you'll take another 6 months or a year living it and reliving it.
It's emptying the toxic tanks.
Yeah.
And like closure, really, isn't it? For you on the chapter that you've been going through.
So I signed it in the November, took ill health redundancy, and then 2 days before Christmas, when I was planning Christmas, thinking, right, we can get it all sorted, let's have Christmas with this guy, let's, you know, it'll all be lovely. He decided to finish it. Because that's the kind of toxic guy he was.
Merry Christmas.
Saving grace was he did leave all my presents underneath the bed, and I can't actually ever understand why you'd buy somebody about £300 worth of presents on the Monday and finish the relationship on the Wednesday.
I have a question. My experience of, I'm looking at the word narcissism here, and toxic relationships, and it can work female to male, because I've experienced this the other way round for two males I know, is that they thrive off somebody who's failing, or they look like they're failing. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, of course.
Who's in that cycle of downness. But as soon as that person then starts to show signs of finding who they are, coming out of it, that's not feeding them anymore. I'm off.
That's
Does that make sense?
It does, because I had one friend who said to me, I rang them up one day, male friend, and he said, how are you doing? And I said, do you know what, I'm starting to feel that I'm on the right road. Things are actually getting better. And he said, oh, that's a shame, I prefer it when you were down. At least he was honest.
Yeah.
At least he was honest.
Oh,
I was
right. That's
taken aback.
interesting.
Yeah, we're not really
right.
friends.
That's what I had to say.
I know.
Well, they do say that those sometimes nearest and dearest to you are the ones that can hurt you the most, don't they?
Yes.
It's bizarre. I thought it was a really weird thing to say at the time.
Isn't it?
You know, like I say, at least he was honest.
But at the same time, it just goes to show how much of a toxic vampire this guy was, because he was sucking the life out of you.
He was a friend, so I had a friend doing it, and I had the guy I was in a relationship with.
Wow.
So it was just...
I was going to say, like, for me, because that's in my first book, I've written about the narcissism, like there's a spectrum where you've got a narcissist and then you've got an empath. And when you're at the total opposite end, because the empath is like, I'll serve you, and then the narcissist is, I'm going to take everything for myself, isn't it? But then when you start to work on yourself, you come at that spectrum and you don't attract that kind of person anymore.
No.
So they go out of your life.
Go out of your life. And one of my counsellors actually said to me, she said, do you know what? She said, all your life, 'cause we talked about my life and we talked about the situation I was in this relationship. And she said, all your life, she said, you seem to have rescued men. And she said, what you need is a man who will rescue you. And I found him. I have found him. Tell more about him in a minute. But yeah, it just became evident that was what was going on. And so when he left, it broke my heart, you know, because I believed totally that it was the right thing and we were together for all the right reasons, which clearly we weren't. But that was 2 days before Christmas. I went out with my parents for Christmas lunch that year. I felt a bit like a child because they had a table for two and I was sat on the end. The only thing I didn't have was a high chair.
They weren't expecting you, were they?
They weren't, no. So I'd rung up and they'd like 2 days before Christmas said, we'll fit you in.
Yeah.
But did you take your own decaf?
No, I wasn't on decaf then, not as much. No, I didn't realise then that decaf tea was actually feeding that anxiety as well. And that became, I learned that later on. But it was interesting because I did that, and then for some reason, I don't, you know, you ladies are lovely spiritual ladies, so you do go.
You're heading towards your light bulb moment.
I literally was in my flat that had the dry rot, and I was starting to work on it and get it all sorted out. And I remember quite distinctly lying on the floor, because I always went to the floor, and that was apparently what happens when, to some people, I'm not sure if it's all, but some people, when you have depression, you go to the floor and you lie on the floor because it's a feeling of not being able to go any further.
All right.
So that's why I just sat on the floor. I was crying into the floor, and No idea where it came from. I don't know what happened. But literally, I was lifted up and I was put on the settee.
Oh, wow.
And I suppose, was it told, or did I have this feeling, or did it come into my mind? I don't know. This whole thing of like, you're going to be okay. It's all going to be all right.
So for
Get you
you,
through.
was that the beginning of you opening
That
up
was the
spiritually
beginning.
as
So
well?
then-
So the
No,
spiritual-
I've always been kind of open for
Okay.
spiritual. Yeah, I used to go for readings when I was first married in 1992. So all those years ago, there was one lady in Chiswick, still in touch with her today, and she lived up north now, but she had a shop, and she was the only shop in London, the only spiritual shop at that time in Chiswick.
wow.
And I went to her and had a reading in 1995, I think, or something. So I've always been, very spiritual.
Open-minded.
And really, and my grandfather, as I spoke to you about before, he passed when I was 16. And I think from that point on, I started to believe and know that he was here, because that's when I started to get my confidence. That's when I started to speak out. That's when I started to be that person that went through their corporate career, And every time I had a reading, people have always related to him and said that he was there, And I kind of think, for me, it's always been, if I didn't believe, if I didn't have that belief that they were still around, that I could still speak to them and communicate with them, I could not have dealt with their passing.
Yeah.
That was how it feels to me. I can't associate them gone forever. So for me, it really worked in that kind of way, that I had to then work through, I know they're here, I know that, and to be honest, when I was going through my depression, I used to actually feel, I never knew, I do know whether it was a dream or not, but I had this dream that my grandfather had come in the night and had held me and had comforted me, because I woke myself up crying. That's how bad it had got. And he comforted me. And when I woke up, it literally felt like we are sat here. That's how real it was. And there was a mark on the bed where somebody had sat.
But
And so I knew at that point that,
Give you
I
the
was not
signs.
alone with it.
and you can see as well visually, can't you?
Yes, I see visually.
Yeah.
I can see, I can hear, I can feel, I can, I can smell. I always get
cool.
smells.
That's
wherever
pretty
I
good.
am.
That's good.
Yeah.
4 out of the 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Can be a bit
pretty-
annoying though, can't it?
Can be annoying sometimes. I have to remember.
I have to put some of that to bed now because it was annoying me.
I have to kind of like close off. That's my
Yes.
biggest problem, is that I forget
Yeah,
to close
to
off, and then
close
I
off.
absorb stuff,
Yeah,
which is
because
what happened to the
that
railway.
could drain you as well.
That's I think what happened was it just was draining
So
me,
it's
this whole
a
dark
massive
stuff.
learning curve.
So yeah, so I
isn't it?
literally, around between Christmas 2009 and January 2010, I was like, right, I am never, ever, ever, ever in my life having another 2009. Never. I will do everything. The minute I get to a point where I feel I'm going to hit that, I will do stuff to change it.
Yeah.
Which is where my leg has come in now, because I've got bad legs.
I was going to
It's
say,
going,
yeah.
stop now.
So that
Yeah.
leads on quite nicely to, like, what would you say to our listeners who maybe don't even know, like, the signs of burnout, and how can you kind of prevent it from happening to you? Because that's the best kind of medicine, I guess, isn't it? Is preventing
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I look back now, and because in 2010 I started my business, which is Awaken, and I did that because I wanted to help people not go where I went. So I never want people to go. It was the horrible, dark, dreary, lonely, sad journey. I mean, I went through the whole suicidal thoughts, the whole self-harm, all of that.
We've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Actually,
vile, isn't
yeah.
it?
Before
Yeah,
you go
absolutely vile.
anymore, like when I started doing your networking, that's exactly where I was, because we come out of lockdowns and stuff, and I was on the other end of, not being vaccinated and all that jazz, and had lots of abuse. And then when I came to your networking, it was at the right time and right place. And it was just so friendly, and you were so open and welcoming, and it's the first
It's the
time
right
I've
for
ever
you.
experienced networking like that ever, because some of them could be quite harsh, can't they?
Yeah.
So that was like the turning point for me, really. It was coming back to
Oh,
yours.
lovely. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try to make them friendly, open, supportive, kind. If you don't want to stand up and say anything, you don't have to. If you can be very much who you are. And that's the kind of general stuff I want to do in the workshops that I do. I
I'll
do
have
the
to come to
workshops.
one of
Yes,
those.
because I've been on one.
They were, and I love doing them.
Yeah, because I went on the
business masterclass is now called.
business masterclass.
Yeah, instead of business surgery.
Which
There's
is
there's a reason for that, which I'll do. That's another story in itself. Everything in my life is a story. But yeah, between that time, those dates, I was like, I'm just changing, and so I started to read. I read a lot. I read a lot of books. I read a book called Love Life, Live Life by Sue Stone. I read a lot about which I've just done a talk with. I read about the power of the unconscious mind. I started to understand that what was in my mind was actually what I was bringing and manifesting in my life. And I started to work on the fact of what if as I started the business, what should I be looking at sharing with other people around the signs? And I always do talks now around what I call the 7 signs of not coping. And if I'd have known those 7 signs before, which is why now we were having the conversation about stopping and getting myself back to, settling, there are things like I was very paranoid. I thought everybody was talking about me. I became very lonely because I shut myself off. I was isolated. So that's 3 of them. Personality changes. I became so negative. I'm not a negative person. You know me long enough, both of you. I'm not a negative person. But everything was negative. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd always carry an umbrella in case it rained, if you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean? The sun would be shining, but it was that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of personality changes. Physical ailments, as I've already described, with the leg and so a lot of colds, a lot of flu, all that, and the anger. I am not an angry person. I am never an angry person, but I could tell you now, the minute that was all going wrong, I became angry with everything and everybody.
And that kind of goes well with the depression side of it as well, doesn't it? Because that's like, if I know I'm going in a dip now, I know if I'm getting angry because I'm not angry at all, I got to stop, like you.
Yeah.
And then reel it back in, because that's the depression side coming in.
It's coming out. It's the black kind of like, this is what's happening.
So a few weeks ago,
if we only had the
Chris said to me, Chris is number 3 in the podcasting group, by the way, everybody. He said to me, "You seem very angry at the moment," and I realised that I was starting to get stressed up again. So when I've just had a holiday, and I brought myself back down.
Yeah. I know you have to.
And I've come back feeling,
especially as a business,
so much happier and focused again. But I had to take myself completely away from everything to do that. So have you got any tips where not everybody can afford a holiday?
I would say to people, do you know what, if you do nothing else, if you don't go away, we don't go away, we've got a couple of days off now next week, my husband and I. It was my rock, and I will share this story with everybody because it's a lovely story before we finish. But I say to myself, and I say to him, right, we just need to stop.
Yeah.
No plans, not necessarily going. He's not somebody who wants to jump on a plane and go abroad, and I'm not bothered either. In fact, I'd rather go to a country show than an awards dinner at the Grosvenor these days. That's, easier in my wellies and my trainers than I am in anything else. But I just say to people, just stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just stop. Stop what you're doing. Stop for a day. Get a good book. Watch a good movie. Watch a bit of telly. Sleep. Relax. Drink a lot of water. Start to eat some healthier foods, tune into that kind of vegetables, fruit, the usual stuff, but really try and just say to yourself, I've got to stop.
It's not having guilt as well, is it?
It is, and it's saying to yourself, you're allowed to do this, because the world will not end if we stop for a day.
And there's this little thing, like I've just literally bought a watch for myself because my guides have guided me to do it, because I'm working with a neuro coach at the minute.
Yeah.
And I find it hard to stop and stay still because I like to be busy and doing stuff, which leads to burnout, doesn't it? And it's part of autism, whatever. So like with the new watch that I've got, it's all got a body battery on there, which tells me how much energy I've got, which is good visually.
Yeah.
And it also shows me when you stop how much you recharge your battery.
Yeah.
So that's how I've learned to stop now, because I can visually see it.
You can visually do it.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
I just know. Exactly. My leg, usually, I got a leg that does that. You've got to watch. I got a leg that goes, because I have no option. Like I couldn't go to our show. I couldn't do all these things. I've had to stop and rest my leg. There is no option.
They actually create this for you.
Yeah.
They're stopping
They're
our guys.
stopping.
If we
Like
can't
today.
see it in the human form,
They will.
they will stop you. And
They
I
will
have,
stop.
and across social media, I see so many mediums and stuff say, "Oh, I'm ill. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm so sorry, everybody." But actually, you've been stopped because you're exhausting yourself.
exhausted, and that's what
you're
you
seeing
can
them
do.
all over everything, and they're burning out with
They
the
do.
spiritual connection.
Yeah, and that's it. And then I started to, during 2010, started my business. I'd met back in about 2007, 2008, when all of it started to go a bit wrong. I was in Raglan, where I live. My family and everything were all there. And I came out of the fish and chip shop one day, and walking into the fish and chip shop was a gentleman who was my first boyfriend when I was 17. And he was walking in, I was coming out, and I went, "Hello." And he went, "Hi, how you doing?" And I said, "Fine." And so, "I'm really sorry to hear about it," because his relationship had just broken up. And he said, "Oh, these things happen," sort of thing. And we started chatting, and I said, "Look, if you need a friend, I mean, I was still in this horrible toxic relationship, but I said, if you need a friend, I'm happy to go out for a coffee or whatever." Anyway, we texted each other, and we went out for a drink, and talked a lot. Just talked all night about the good old days and stuff like that. Anyway, over time, we kind of, like all friendships, you don't see each other for a while, and then you come back together. But by the time we'd got to 2009, 2010, we started to be in touch a lot more. And then when all this happened with this toxic guy, it was to him I turned, and he became my rock. And he became the person that would be there with the tissues and the tea, and he would literally pick me up from the end of the road, like where I was, whatever, like the end of the road. Didn't just hang around on the end of the road, but I'd be at my parents. That sounds a bit dodgy, yeah.
That's a bit
sounds like my
dodgy.
parents or something. And I would walk up to the end of the road, and he would pick me up from the bench just to drive me up the house, up to his house, which would probably be, well, it's less than a minute's journey. So that's how, because I didn't want to meet people on the road, but he would do that so that I wouldn't have to.
Supporting you.
So literally supported me through everything. And then as 2009, so I was still living in Newport then. As 2009 come to an end, we got, I was back in my house, and I said to myself, January the 1st, I'm going to get everything done in my house and sorted by March the 24th, and I'm going to put it on the market, my flat. Why March the 24th? I don't know. This numbers lady might be able to tell me. My parents live in a house number 24. I don't know.
Ooh.
But I was absolutely just going to do it. I knew I was going to do it. I was determined I was going to do it. And I did it. And I put it on the market. And I was like, I need to move. I just need to move now. I need to get out. And it didn't happen in 2010 for some reason. I took it back off the market. It just wasn't selling, and I didn't feel it. That sense. I didn't feel it. But as that journey kind of progressed, Mike and I became closer. And all my friends were saying to me, "Why don't you two get together? You and Mike should be together. You need to be together." And I was like, "No, I don't be together." Yes, you need to be together. It's, you can see it, you can feel it. It's just, you can see how you are with each other. But then someone asked me a very interesting question as we approached Christmas 2010. They said, "What would you do if Mike walked in here with someone else?" Oh, my heart. I tell you, I fell. I was like, I can't even answer that question. I don't even. And they went, "Well, you need to tell him that then, don't you?"
Oh, wow.
Because you cannot risk the loss of losing him again. So
You've had some
January,
really good people in your life.
Yeah,
haven't
that's
you?
amazing.
really good.
Wow.
And in the January 2011, I texted him and said, "Should we go out for a pizza?" And he said, "Is it a date?" And I said, "Well, could be." So we went out, and the
you
rest
do.
is history. So we chatted.
were married the next day.
Oh God, that took 10 years. And yeah, but we literally got together then, and that was 2011. And we were married in 2022, so it was 11 years.
Oh, wow.
But we kind of got together, and then
Yeah.
I moved in 2017 and stuff. But he's got 2 children, and they're absolutely adorable. They're like having children of my own, and it's just amazing. And he is my rock, and he always will be my rock. And he's the person, if ever I'm going through, any anxieties or anything like that, I will pick up the phone, and he's there.
I have something to add to this, because I have people say to me, I met a lady the other day who's 69, and she came up to me in a fair and she said to me, I've just got into all of this, am I too late?
Oh, bless.
And I
Bless
said
her.
no, and I said to her, it's because some of us have to live a human life. We're here to learn things. You can still have that spiritual connection through your life, those thoughts and feelings, but you have events, and then you have a catalyst that sends you into that spiritual. You're always on a spiritual path, but then it sends you into that when you flip it and you then turn that into, I can now use this to help other people. And there's so many of us out there that have, because I was in my 40s when I sort of had my ignition,
I was,
as I
I
call
was
it.
40s
And
when it happened.
and I always say to my guys, why on earth couldn't you? Why couldn't I have started this earlier? I could have helped so many people. And they said, because you need to learn the lessons to this point.
Yeah.
And then you learn the lessons to this point, and then you start your spiritual business and whatever you're doing. But you're still going to have odd lessons as you go as well.
As you go.
Yeah.
So that's when I started. I did start to go to a spiritualist church in that time, during that time, as I was coming out of the burnout and everything. That was when I kind of started to, tune in, I suppose. That's when I started to look at a lot of angels' work and work
That's
with
what
them.
I did, yeah.
And started to do a lot around that. Looking back, it's very interesting. They always say, don't they, that life is the one place where experience comes before the lesson. And I think that's true. It's very much about what
And
you
like
were
my
saying.
guides will always say to me now, because they're teaching like a positive mindset for like adversity and things like that, is that like everything happens for a reason, and that life happens for you. So like to look at it as an opportunity instead of, oh, why me?
Yeah, and there are times, I say to Mike, I wonder what would happen if we'd have been together when we were 17, and maybe we'd got that farm and I'd have had my 2 donkeys, which I love, but we weren't meant to be together at that time.
No, but in another way, because this is what we've spoken to in the past, isn't it, on our podcast series, is that because there's so many different timelines running in the quantum multiverse, it probably did happen somewhere, but not in your life, because that's not.
Well, interestingly, when I was 17, he's 24, and he doesn't sound like a believer or anything like that, although he can find water in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere with his rods, which is quite bizarre. He thinks everybody can do it. Everybody can do that. To understand why he's saying it's like spiritual. It's not. Everybody can do it. It's all right to go. He said to me when he finished it, now when you're 17, you don't want to. He broke my heart. He's my first boyfriend. He broke my heart, and he said to me, we can't be together right now. This is the situation. You've got too much living to do. You won't be living in Wrangell in 10 years' time. He said, I can tell you now, you won't be. He said, I think we'll be together in the future. I don't know when.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how.
But as a 17-year-old, you wouldn't want to hear that, would you?
I thought he was just dumping me.
He's very wise.
He's just dumping me. And he went, we will be together. But he said, I have no idea when. But he said, this isn't our time.
He's very old, wise, ancient.
Yeah, so it was very, very bizarre how then...
You're very spiritual, Mike.
He says he's not. He's just I think he is, he's just very... And it's weird, because when I was growing up, I was talking about my car, a lovely car outside, and that was part of my dream and everything. But when I was growing up, I always used to think, I don't think I'm ever going to be pregnant. I don't think I'm ever going to have a child of my own, but I will have 2 stepchildren who will absolutely be part of my life.
Into your soul,
even when I was a child.
connection.
Yeah, when I was a child. And I was forever asking my parents if I was a twin. They were like, no. I was like, oh, I'm sure I'm a twin. Anyway, that was really bizarre. And
Twin soul.
yeah, somewhere. And I just used to think, I'm not going to get pregnant. I don't know why, but I just knew. See, the thing is, then I got very confused because every guy I was ever with had 2 kids, right? So I was like, well, this is the one. This is the one. Oh no, it's not him. This is the one. And I tell you what, I kissed many frogs before Mike came back in my life with his 2 children. And I always used to say, I want to meet somebody like my dad. My dad adores my mum, absolutely. And I used to think, oh, I could just find somebody like my dad. Wouldn't that be amazing? Somebody that adored me, somebody that would just be there for me. And how strangely that my dad is a Mr. M. Jones, as is Mike.
Manifested.
He's a Mr. M. Jones. They're both Sagittarians, and they were both brought up as farmers.
Oh wow.
So
you've got what you
it's a-
asked for, really, in the end.
And that's the thing. I always, my friends used to say to me, how do you? It's just, how do you always get? You put something out there and it happens. I went, I don't know. Well, it is what it is, But I know even my legs probably just me manifesting my need to slow down. I'm exhausted and stuff. But yes, that's my aim. Help people. That's why I wrote the book.
Oh, so we're going to start concluding the podcast now. So I want to promote the book, Made It Through the Rain, to Light the Journey Ahead by Beverly Jones. And where can we buy that, Beverly?
On Amazon.
Or
my website.
We'll put some links
Awaken
in the
Mentoring.
podcast copy. And Amanda,
I was just going to say, so like how, at the moment with your business, the Awakening Mentoring, how do you help people specifically right now with what you're doing?
I always had this thing that I wanted to help everybody, and then you can't help everybody because that's just, that's what they say, isn't it? But I kind of feel that people are drawn to me. So I've not that I've given up. Mike's had a business for 46 years and his list is always full because constantly people ring him. And that's, I think, the best marketing you could ever get. So I tend to now I do marketing. I do all of that stuff that you need to do. But I want to help as many people as I can. So now I do more public speaking because I believe that by sharing my story and sharing the things that I've probably shared
got
here,
a whole room listening.
I can help a whole room, right?
Yeah,
Not
the
just
whole
help
world.
one-to-one. I still do one-to-ones if people really request them, but they're not on my services out there. I run the networks, as you've mentioned, Torvine Breakfast, which is fab. I run an Awaken Women's Entrepreneurs, which is a ladies group, which I bring people together on a monthly basis and have conversations with them. So where I can help, I just feel I'm being drawn to different things, and then that's how it works.
And then also, because I know I need to send Chloe a form.
That's all right.
You
That's fine.
run exhibitions as well, don't you?
I run MBS shows, yes.
That's
I
it.
run Mind, Body, Spirit shows, and I've run those for 8 or 9 years.
Yeah,
I think
been
you've
to a
had
couple,
stands,
yes.
Yeah.
You got one coming up in
I have
Chepstow,
got one
haven't
coming
you?
up, so yeah, it'd be lovely if you
October.
could join us because it's absolutely amazing. We only do 3 a year. The reason I only do 3 a year is because I believe that that's right for me. It's where I get my energy,
Lot of
because I've
work.
got a lot of the other businesses to do. I work with a lovely Chloe, who's my assistant now, and she's kind of events marketing manager, so she does a lot of the pulling together, But people say to me, would you run more? No, because I want to. They're there. This is where the Awaken show is. It's in spring, it's in summer, it's in autumn. And if you like, you can be drawn to those and come to those then. I don't want to be running them every week, because for me personally, that would be too much of a drain on me.
And it makes them more special as well.
I want to make a special, beautiful place that so people come and the energy is right. And
I
all
can
of
vouch
that.
for that because I've been at one and it's just lovely. And you come round and you're like, I've sat there on my phone, you're like, come on, stand up, chat to people, and I think that's nice because you don't get that very.
Yeah, I just
many
try and
places.
encourage
People are too interested in
Yeah.
just getting the rent off you and then leaving
and
you
that's
to
not
it.
what I
Yeah.
want to do. That's not what it's
No.
about. And all the
Shouldn't be.
shows
Should be
are
collective.
priced accordingly to the venue. So
Yeah.
the bigger the venue, the higher the price, because I can't do anything else. I have to, do you know what I mean?
Gotta cover it,
I've got to
haven't you?
cover it.
Yeah.
And
And you-
Chepstow Racecourse is expensive because
It's
Chepstow
But then on
Racecourse.
top of
Yeah.
that, you say that, but then I've been to places like the autism thing I went a couple of weeks ago, and like people wanted to charge over $1,000 for one day, and then in retrospective, I think that's quite reasonable now when you look at it that way. Plus, you've also got speakers there as well.
Yeah.
So you've got the best of both worlds.
Exactly, and
really.
we brought it down, so we brought the speakers downstairs, so it's £5 entry now or £8 for a double ticket. So if you come with a friend, you can get your ticket for £8.
Oh wow,
Banging.
that's good.
So yeah, just to try and say to people, come along and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And we believe we give value for money, and that's what it's about. And we want to try and help as many people through that. Well, I want to help people. For me, the biggest success of that day is that if I have exhibitors come to bring their lovely products and services, what I want them to do is to make the money back that they paid out on that stand
Yeah.
and more.
Yeah.
And if I can help them do that, so, you know, I'll go round and say, well, why don't you just try maybe doing this, or why don't you stand, don't sit behind there,
Yeah, stand up.
why don't you have this
That's something I've
conversation?
learned. You have to stand up.
Yeah, and just try as best I can to try and, you know, and I'm like, well, why don't you put your leaflets out here, or why don't you put a couple of names on your sheet, and
it
you know,
builds confidence as well, because
Yeah.
it's helped me
I've
massively.
learned from the persona of people come to my stalls whether to talk to them or not, because some people
Yeah.
like to look and not speak, and some will engage.
absolutely,
And I usually say something to them, and I know straight away that they immediately go like that. Literally,
Yeah.
you can see them move away. So
Yeah.
you have to be quite tuned in to
yeah,
how you react.
and that's
to
how it
people.
is. Yeah, with me
Yeah.
centre. That's
That's cool.
That's it. That's what I do.
I presume you have a website.
Yes, www.awakenmentoring.co.uk.
One more thing though, before we add the details on the end, because I got my notepad here, you know, I'm like, there's one thing. So when you do work with people, I forgot to ask, like a one-to-one basis, or the other parts that you do you do like Zoom calls as well, as in not only in the UK area, but
I have over the years, but actually now it tends to be more local and
Okay.
more. I will go like public speaking.
yeah.
I'll do out there on Zoom calls or team meetings or whatever. If I go, I might go to London, or I might go to Manchester, I might go to Scotland to do a talk.
Right.
That's one thing. But my Awaken Women's Entrepreneurs, my shows, they're all based in South East Wales, and that's where they are. And if people would like to come along, then absolutely come. Do you know what I mean? 100%.
Cool.
But I've kind of learned that I need to do this, or I work all along the M4 corridor, and I was basically, you know, shown, you need to do that. You know, you don't need to do that. And Mike's brilliant.
Cool.
He's very good at, you know, bringing things back down if ever I'm kind of in a bit of thing. He's like, he grounds me totally. Yeah, he always says to me, what would you tell if I was your coach and you were the client? What would I be telling you right now? That's what he says to me. I'm like, okay.
Oh, I don't want to swap
Stop.
around the edge.
Yeah.
I'd really get on my nerves.
But he's really good, because he does actually just say to me, look, why are you worrying about something that hasn't happened yet? Let's just take today as it is, and let's work through it, and we'll be all right. It'll be okay.
Can I borrow him?
No,
So,
sorry.
well, I just want to
Sorry for my child.
thank you for participating.
Thank you
and
for
I've got a
having me. It's
special
been
guest.
great.
I think we've all will learn a lot from listening to you, and it's a reminder to us all that we do need to take control. And the other thing that I'd like to add is I have a guide that continuously tells me to slow down and whatever. And the other thing I do is personally is I give my worries over to them.
Yeah.
I give my concerns and worries over to them, which I find helps pace my life.
There is one
Absolutely.
new thing that my guides have brought in, because I work with numbers,
Yeah.
and I literally will keep going because it's just me in the house and my daughter. So I said, like, right, can you bring something in then? So I get 26, and I know I gotta stop and be human.
Yeah,
Stop
that's your
everything, like you
signal
said,
sign.
and then
I get 66. That's my sign that everything's going to be okay.
Mine's 11:11.
I'm still getting
Get 11s
physical
everywhere.
signs. I walked up the canal the other day thinking about what I'm trying to manifest at the moment and everything, a few personal things going on. And literally from the sky came 3 white feathers floating down in front of me as I walked along. Thank you very much. Recognised the sign, and I carried on. And that's years working with the celestial energies, and they still give me the signs of
Yeah, you still
comfort,
get
just because
signs.
I've
I
still
get
got that
comfort
human
signs.
side that needs that comfort.
Yeah.
But we want to
absolutely.
thank you ever so much, and we will conclude this.
Thank you for having me. It's
And
been great.
we'll pop
Look-
all the information
Yeah.
in the about part on the podcast.
Watch out on social media for our future special guest podcast.
Thank you. And watch
Thank
out
you,
for my
everyone.
second book next year.
Oh, second book. Have you
Yay.
named it yet?
I think I have, yeah. I'm
No,
halfway
secret,
through
is
writing
it?
it, but
Okay.
you know, it's been halfway written for
But you'll
the
have
last
to
2
come.
years.
You'll have to come back and promote it.
Yeah, well,
There you go.
absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.